My name is David Harper. I'm 47 years old. Husband, business owner, provider. That's what they used to call me. At least when they wanted something. I used to think the quiet made me strong. That restraint, measured words, controlled breath under fire. That was dignity. But real silence is something else. It's not strength. It's what remains after a public execution of trust. It's the sound you hear when the people closest to you rip the ground from under your feet and expect you to thank them for the fall. It happened on a Thursday. Megan had planned it. Family dinner, she called it. Nothing fancy, just a night to celebrate. She said it was for the new partnership, for the year of hard work. For us. The restaurant was just outside Denver. One of those upscale places with dim lighting and furniture that tried too hard to look minimalist. The kind where the food is art and the service is silent. We brought Kyle, her brother, and his wife, and 2 of our board members with their spouses. Megan looked perfect, too perfect now that I think back. The dress, the makeup, even the scent she wore that night. Expensive. Intentional. She didn't look like a woman coming to celebrate with her husband. She looked like a woman about to cut him open. The wine flowed. Laughter. Toasts. Kyle making cracks about the old days when we were just another struggling firm trying to stay afloat. Megan laughed too loud. Touched his hand too much. Her smile never reached her eyes. I didn't notice the tension until the dessert menus came. Until her chair scraped back from the table. Until she stood up like a judge rising from the bench. Then it happened. She slapped me. Not a playful tap. Not a drunken swing. This was deliberate. Calculated. The sound echoed in the cavernous space like gunfire. My head snapped to the side. I stumbled back. My chair clattered to the floor behind me. A few gasps. A knife paused mid-cut. And then stillness. Like the room had rehearsed this moment. "You don't belong here," she said, voice sharp, dead. "Get lost." I looked up at her. Not at her hand, not at Kyle's smug face, not at the waitress frozen with the check still in her hand. I looked at Megan, and she didn't blink. That was when I understood. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't the result of some long-building argument. This was coordinated, staged. She had meant to do this here, now, in front of witnesses. In public, where I wouldn't shout. Where I wouldn't fight back. That's what made it theatrical. The performance. The cruelty of it. Not just that she turned on me, but that she wanted an audience. The worst part? No one moved. Not Kyle. Not the board members. Not even the waiter, whose eyes darted nervously between us. Unsure if this was a domestic dispute or a business divorce in real time. Everyone just watched. As if they'd known. As if they were waiting for this. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I stood slowly, brushing the sleeve of my jacket. I adjusted my collar, dabbed the blood at the corner of my mouth with a linen napkin. My heart pounded not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't about love, or even hate. This was about control. So I gave her what she didn't expect. Calm. I looked at her, looked at Kyle. Then, to the table, to the eyes avoiding mine, to the faces of people who knew what was happening but said nothing. And I spoke. "Good thing," I said, slow, deliberate. "The lease, the company charter, and the account rights are all signed in my name." It was like a switch flipped. Megan's expression faltered. Her lips twitched, barely, and her posture stiffened. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't counted on me knowing. Hadn't prepared for resistance, only for the humiliation. The spectacle. The control. But that line, that one sentence, took it away from her. Her face went pale. Kyle's eyes narrowed. He opened his mouth to speak, but I was already turning. I didn't slam the chair down. I didn't curse. I didn't shout. I walked, one foot in front of the other, past the wine glasses, past the linen tablecloths and imported silver, past Kyle's wife, who turned her face toward the wall, past the hostess, who tried not to look at me as I passed. The door opened. The night air hit me like a confession, cold and sharp. I didn't look back. The drive home was silent. Not just because I turned the radio off, but because something inside me had gone quiet. Not dead. Not yet. But still. still in the way a man gets just before the blade falls. I pulled into a gas station outside the city, sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes staring at the steering wheel. The glow of the streetlight cast a halo across the windshield, and all I could think about was the look on her face, that flicker of panic, that crack in the mask. She thought I was a fool. She thought I'd been blind, oblivious. She thought she could build a plan in whispers and seal it with a slap. But I'd seen enough board meetings, enough signatures, enough backdated memos passed through Kyle's hands. I hadn't spoken of it. I hadn't confronted it. I had waited, let them think I was asleep. But I never sleep when my name is on the line. That's the truth no one likes to admit. When you build something from nothing, you never stop watching the walls for cracks. And that night I saw the fault lines, clear as glass. Megan standing over me, Kyle smirking across the table, the board members too silent, too still, like they had been warned, like they had rehearsed. It wasn't just betrayal. It was choreography, and I had just stepped off their stage. I didn't go home. I didn't call her. I drove past the house, the one I paid for, the one she remodeled without asking, and parked 2 blocks down. I watched the lights in the window. Nothing out of place. No movement. Just another suburban lie wrapped in soft glow. I thought of going in, but I already knew what I'd find. Kyle in the kitchen, her on the phone. Conversations whispered in past tense, as if I were already gone. So I drove again, into the hills, into the silence. My phone buzzed 3 times, Megan, then Kyle, then a number I didn't recognize. I let them ring. When I stopped, I was overlooking the valley, the city lights beneath me like scattered stars. And I said nothing, because words had no weight anymore. Not when the people closest to you had already decided your voice didn't matter. I sat there for a long time. I thought about the years, about how it started, about how Megan used to look at me like I was a fire she didn't know how to hold. And then I thought about how easily she doused it. One slap, one sentence, one lie, delivered in front of people who smiled and sipped their wine while I bled. I made one call, not to her, not to Kyle, to Richard, my attorney. Activate the file, I said. He didn't ask which one. I heard the rustle of papers, the quiet breath of understanding. Understood, he said. That was it. No yelling, no threats, just quiet action. The kind of silence they hadn't prepared for. The next morning, the sun rose like it always did, indifferent. The kind of clear Colorado sky that makes you believe in new beginnings, even when you're still bleeding from the night before. I didn't sleep. Not really. I parked in an old lot near the Platte River and sat there until dawn, staring at the dashboard, letting the silence stretch. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was older, colder, the kind of clarity you get when there's nothing left to misinterpret. They had planned it, Megan and Kyle, probably for months, and I hadn't stopped them. That was my mistake. I let kindness become passivity. I let patience become silence. I mistook their whispers for stress, their late-night calls for work. I ignored the signs because the truth was inconvenient. But now I saw it all. The pieces weren't scattered anymore. They were aligned, sharp, and Kyle had always been the cockroach in the corner. The kind that scurried through your business decisions, offering advice you never asked for. Megan insisted I bring him in. It's just temporary, she said. Just until we scale. That was 3 years ago. He never left. He slithered into contracts, sat in on strategy calls, met vendors behind my back. And Megan? She backed him at every step. Every warning I raised was met with the same dismissive touch on my arm. The same line. He's family, David. He's helping. Helping. Like a vulture helps a dying animal by picking it clean. And now, after everything I'd built, the years of sweat, the deals signed under pressure, the weekends sacrificed, they wanted me out. Not fired. Not even ruined. Just erased. Quietly. Neatly. Like I had been a placeholder all along. But they made one mistake. They thought I wouldn't fight. That morning, while Denver stretched awake, I drove straight to Richard's office. He opened the door in his slippers. You're early. You're awake. He didn't ask what happened. He knew. Richard always knew. The man read contracts like most people read people. We sat in his study. Coffee. Silence. Then the documents. Megan and Kyle had already made moves. Richard slid the folder across the desk. They filed a petition 2 weeks ago, attempting to restructure equity under grounds of mental fatigue on your part. They're trying to claim you're unfit to hold executive control. I stared at the page. It wasn't even surprising. Are they that stupid? They're that confident, he replied. They've been shopping the narrative to your board, leaking stories about your erratic behavior. Kyle even floated the idea that you've been under psychiatric care. I laughed. A low, bitter sound. What about financials? Richard didn't laugh. They've already tried to access the operating account. Twice. Blocked both times, your signature protocols held. But they're pushing. Loans? He nodded. They used your personal collateral for 2 business lines. Small, but enough to muddy the water. All of it routed through the shell Kyle registered last year. I clenched my jaw. That shell company, Ironcrest Holdings. I remembered the name now, buried in a licensing document I'd skimmed too fast. I let it through because Megan said it was just a placeholder entity. Temporary. Temporary like termites. They were burrowing through the foundation while I was too busy pouring the concrete. I stood up. Freeze everything. Richard nodded. Already started. I'll notify the bank. Revoke Megan's financial powers. I'll also flag the board, send them a legal advisory about the restructuring attempt. And the accountant? Richard reached for his phone. He's on his way. I drove straight to the firm. My firm. It still bore my name on the glass, Harper Systems, though that name had been increasingly absent from the branding materials. Another slow, careful erasure. Quiet. Strategic. Like I had died, and they were repurposing the corpse. The receptionist smiled as I entered, but there was hesitation in her voice, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to, like word had spread. Mr. Harper. You're early. I didn't respond. I walked through the halls I had built, past the glass offices I once scrubbed clean myself at midnight. The people inside looked up, startled, then quickly absorbed in their screens. The shuffle of guilty eyes. They knew. Of course they knew. Megan had been laying groundwork, telling people I was taking a step back, that I was struggling with the pressures of leadership. Kyle called it a necessary transition. Necessary. Like an old horse being walked behind the barn. I walked into my office and closed the door. It still smelled like leather and ink and coffee. The walls still held the awards I never bothered to dust. On the shelf was a photo, me and Megan, early days, back when we still believed this thing between us was about building something together. I picked up the photo, looked at the way she leaned into me, looked at the lie. Then I opened my laptop. 30 minutes later, my accountant arrived. Pale, sweating, but loyal. They accessed the emergency fund, he said. 3 withdrawals. Small. Spaced out. Names? Kyle. All signed under a proxy access. Forged but sloppily. I breathed in. No rage. No slammed fists. Just action. Start the fraud report, I said. Notify the bank. Flag every account. Every credit line. I want a full freeze. He nodded. What about Megan? I looked at him. Voice calm. She'll know when the cards decline. That afternoon, I stayed in the office. Watched the silence return. Kyle didn't come in. Megan didn't call. Instead, there were whispers. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Slack messages that stopped the moment I entered the room. They weren't sure how much I knew. Good. Let them wonder. Let them tremble behind their perfect clothes and PowerPoint decks. Let them feel the weight of a man who has stopped pretending to be asleep. I didn't speak to anyone that day, not even my assistant. I just watched, listened, and when the building closed, I walked the halls one more time. This time I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no ownership, just recognition. This place was no longer mine. Not the way I thought. They had gutted it behind my back, hollowed it out and filled it with their schemes. The soul was gone. All that remained was paper and leverage, but that, at least, was still mine. That night I stayed at a hotel, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I wanted the distance. I wanted to breathe without her perfume staining the air. I wanted to sleep without Kyle's voice echoing through my house. I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat. My phone rang 5 times. Megan. Then twice from an unknown number. Then Kyle. No voicemail. No apology. Just attempts. I let them go. By midnight I had everything secured. Every account frozen. Every document transferred. Every access key revoked. Megan's corporate email returned a denial. Kyle's signature on the new equity plan was flagged for fraud. The bank confirmed attempted withdrawals had been blocked. I was calm. That's what made it worse for them. They had expected outrage. Drama. A man destroyed by betrayal. What they got was something far more dangerous. A man who finally saw clearly. They didn't waste time. By the next morning, the pressure campaign had begun. Megan called 5 times before noon. Left 3 voicemails. Her voice changed with each one. The first sounded casual, like nothing had happened. David. Hey, can we talk? Just clear the air? The second was tighter, clipped. I'm not sure what you're doing, but it's not a good look. By the third, the mask was gone. You're acting like a child. This isn't how professionals behave. You're damaging the company, your company. I didn't respond. Kyle texted an hour later. Let's handle this like adults. No need to escalate. We can work out a fair split. Call me. Fair. That word again. Fair to people who wanted me gone. Fair to the brother-in-law who forged my name. Fair to the wife who slapped me in front of friends and said, "You don't belong here." I sat in the corner office, the lights off, watching the skyline shimmer behind glass. Phones buzzed. Emails poured in. But I was still. You learn a lot in silence. By noon, the first board member reached out. Elaine, CFO, close to Megan, or so I thought. She asked for a meeting. Off the record, she said. I agreed. She came in cautious, eyes darting, like she was being watched. I didn't know, she said. Not all of it. I thought you were stepping back, that it was mutual. It wasn't. I believe you. She hesitated. Kyle said you were unstable, that you'd agreed to let the team take more control. Unstable how? Burnout. Erratic behavior. He said you had been skipping meetings, mismanaging funds. I smiled. Have the accounts been mismanaged? No. Have I missed one payroll? No. Then why believe him? She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because lies don't need proof, just repetition. But something in her voice shifted then. A note of guilt. I saw the filings, David. The ones you froze. He was moving fast. Megan was pushing it through. If you hadn't acted, you would have been cut out entirely. I leaned back. Not cut out, I said. Buried. Elaine looked down. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. She left quietly. But it was enough. The tide had started to turn. That evening, Megan escalated. She posted a message on the company's internal channel, addressed to all staff. Leadership requires accountability. Recent disruptions in company structure are being handled with care. We ask for patience as we navigate this challenging time. Mental wellness is not shameful. Support is available. I read it twice, then again. She wasn't just painting me as unstable. She was writing the obituary for my reputation. Subtle, slick, framed like concern. But it was war. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because she made her first fatal mistake that night. A wire transfer. She tried to move $110,000 through a third-party vendor, masked as a strategic partnership fee. I had built the protocol for high-value transactions myself. Dual signature authentication. Real-time alerts. The moment she tried to push it through, it bounced, then flagged, then locked. I got the call. Richard confirmed it, her signature plus Kyle's. No authorization from me. The system froze the request and attached a compliance warning to the vendor account. She had just walked into a trap of her own making. I waited one day, let her squirm, let her call vendors, let Kyle scramble to spin it, and then I sent the invitations. Same restaurant, same table, the same guests who had watched me fall. A week after the slap, I walked into the room they thought they owned. Megan was already seated. Kyle too. They looked smug, still performing, still pretending they were the future of the company, and I was the ghost haunting its past. But the others, the board members, the partners, they were quiet, uncertain, afraid they had picked the wrong side. Good. I let the silence linger. Then I placed a single folder on the table. Thick, stamped, numbered. No speeches, no drama, just documents, account records, wire attempts, proxy access logs, time-stamped fraud reports, audio recordings. Kyle coaching Megan through signature forgeries, talking about how to nudge the old man out. I hit play on one. Kyle's voice filled the space. If he pushes back, we'll say he's unraveling. Megan, you've got the sympathy card. Use it. Cry if you have to. Just make sure the board sees him as unstable. Silence. The air in the room thinned. One of the board members, Greg, from Ops, shifted in his seat. Looked sick. Elaine stared at her plate. I closed the folder. Then I looked at Megan, and I spoke the same words she had thrown at me. I don't belong here, because this place is built on lies. No one moved. No one defended her. She looked around the table, but there were no allies left. Even Kyle looked down. Coward. The meeting ended without another word. One by one they left, avoiding her eyes. Some shook my hand. Some didn't, but all of them understood. The coup had failed. The mask was off. And Megan, the woman who slapped me in front of witnesses, now sat alone at the table she thought she controlled. She followed me outside. Her heels clicked behind me like accusations. You think this wins? She hissed. You think this makes you look noble? I turned slowly. She wasn't angry. She was scared. You humiliated me, she said. In front of everyone. I stared at her, unblinking. You did that yourself, I said. You just thought I wouldn't return the favor. She reached for me, not gently. Nails in my sleeve. Voice sharp. This isn't over, David. I looked down at her hand, then back at her. It is for you. That night I signed the papers. Divorce. Separation of assets. Filed under fraud, misrepresentation, and breach of fiduciary duty. The firm was mine again, but I didn't want it anymore. I started drawing up sale terms the next morning. Because sometimes, survival isn't about winning. It's about leaving the battlefield before it poisons you. I didn't stay to savor the wreckage. The day after that final dinner, I cleared my office. One box. No ceremony. Old pens. A photo of my father. A notebook I never filled. I left the rest. Let the ghosts keep their furniture. Let the hollowed-out building pretend it still held meaning. Elaine stopped by as I was walking out. You're really leaving, she said. Not a question. I've already left. She nodded. Said nothing else. Didn't try to stop me. That told me everything. The war was over. The victors were silent. Outside, the air tasted different. Like cold metal and finality. I didn't go back to the house. I didn't pack bags. Didn't gather keepsakes. I didn't want anything from Megan. Not the wedding photo. Not the furniture. Not the shared bed we no longer slept in. Not even the dog she insisted we adopt during one of her guilt-laced apology phases. Let her keep it all. I had one more appointment, not with Richard, not with the bank. With a realtor. We met at a cafe. She already had buyers interested in my share of the company. Private equity, mostly. They didn't care about the history, the betrayal, the blood in the foundation. They cared about numbers. Margins. Clean exits. I sold fast. Took the penalty. Signed my name and didn't look back. The papers were finalized in less than 6 weeks. Divorce. Liquidation. Asset division. Megan walked away with what was left of the firm, the house, and a mountain of debt she thought I'd carry forever. She didn't call. Not once. Not after the restaurant. Not after the exposure. Not after the papers hit her inbox. Her silence wasn't grief. It was strategy. If she stayed quiet, maybe she'd keep her dignity. Maybe people would forget what she did. They didn't. Word spread. Quietly. Inevitably. Staff resigned. Clients backed out. Investors asked questions she couldn't answer. The foundation crumbled without my name holding it up. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I moved east. Rented a cabin outside Telluride. Cold air. Clean skies. Mountains that didn't ask questions. I chopped my own wood. Cooked alone. Learned the rhythm of days without noise. No phone calls. No meetings. No Megan. That's when the letters started. Not from her. From Kyle. 3 in total. Typed. Signed. Begging. Let's talk. We can rebuild. The firm is suffering without your leadership. The board would support a joint path forward. Joint. The man who forged my name now wanted partnership. I burned the letters. I didn't need closure. I had finality. Then, one evening, a black SUV pulled into the gravel drive. I knew who it was before she stepped out. Megan. She looked different. Not older. Just undone. No makeup. No control. The woman who once stood over me like a judge now stood hunched in a borrowed coat. Eyes red from a different kind of war. I didn't open the door. I waited. She knocked twice. Then she spoke. I messed up. That was all. 3 words. Weak and late. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She stood in the snow, shivering. I didn't expect it to go that far, she said. It was supposed to be a clean transition. I said nothing. I thought you'd let go. Like always. There it was. The truth she had never said aloud. She thought I was too tired to fight. Too loyal to confront her. Too invested to walk away. I waited for more. She gave it. Kyle turned on me, she said. Tried to take full control after you left. The board's fractured. Clients are gone. I'm drowning. I looked past her at the mountains. Quiet. Unmoved. She stepped closer. I came to ask. Not for help. Just. She didn't finish. Because she knew. She wasn't here for redemption. She was here because the safety net was gone. The man she'd used. Shamed. Betrayed. She thought he might still catch her fall. I leaned against the doorframe. You remember what you said? I asked. She blinked. In the restaurant. She didn't respond. So I gave it back to her. You don't belong here. Get lost. Her mouth opened. Closed. She looked down at her boots. Then back at me. Eyes wet. I didn't mean it. I know. I said. You meant worse. She left without another word. I watched the taillights fade down the road until the darkness swallowed them whole. I didn't feel triumph. Just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop carrying what was never yours to bear. Months passed. Spring crawled over the mountains. I planted small things. Basil. Tomatoes. Chopped wood. Slept long. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, ready for confrontation. But there was no one left to fight. Only quiet. Only the truth that had waited for years. I had loved Megan. More than she deserved. More than was healthy. I gave her a life. Company. A future. She repaid me with a performance. But I let it happen. That's the part no one talks about. The man who stays too long. Who forgives too quickly. Who lets silence become permission. They say love is blind. But that's a lie. Love sees everything. It just looks away. One morning a letter came. No return address. Inside, a single page. No signature. Just a sentence scrawled in rushed handwriting. I'm sorry. You were never the villain. I didn't know if it was Megan. Or Kyle. Or someone else who had watched from the sidelines. But it didn't matter. Because I had stopped being someone who needed apologies to feel free. Sometimes people ask what happened. Colleagues. Old friends. I give them the short version. She tried to erase me. I let her think she succeeded. That's the truth. Because the cleanest revenge isn't shouting. It's absence. It's silence that costs them more than your presence ever did. It's watching the world they built without you collapse under the weight of their own lies. So I leave you with this. If a man gives everything, time, labor, love, and is repaid with betrayal, what does he owe in return? Is he cruel for stepping away? Or sane? Is he vindictive for letting consequences land where they belong? Or simply finished being the mule for other people's ambition? I ask you, whoever you are, wherever you sit tonight, watching your own cracks widen under the weight of someone else's comfort, what would you have done? Would you have endured it? Or would you have walked away, quietly, and let the silence speak the truth? Tell me, was I wrong?